You won't believe how one song set MTV on fire, freaked out parents across America, and turned Glenn Danzig into the most feared rock icon of the 90s, all before anyone even knew what was coming. Glenn Danzig didn't ask for fame. He didn't ask for approval. All he did was create music with conviction, a dark and hypnotic sound that demanded attention. In 1988, when his band Danzig released their debut album, the track Mother emerged almost quietly, yet it carried a latent power that would explode years later. The song was built on a foundation of slow, heavy blues-infused metal riffs, a brooding undertone, and Danzig's signature voice, deep, commanding, almost cinematic in its presence. At first, Mother was not meant to dominate charts or receive heavy MTV airplay. It was a piece of resistance, a statement against censorship and the societal fear surrounding heavy music. The lyrics, "Mother, tell your children not to walk my way," sounded like a warning but were dripping with irony. The real target wasn't the teenagers who listened to it was the parents, the lawmakers, the authorities who tried to control art and expression. Before it became a cultural phenomenon, Mother simmered in the underground. Danzig's persona, part Elvis swagger, part gothic menace, had already earned him a dedicated following from his Misfits and Samhain days. Fans knew that when Danzig performed, it wasn't just music, it was theater, ritualistic, powerful. The riff itself had weight, it crawled, it built tension, it carried a sense of doom that was hypnotic and magnetic. Glenn's delivery.com at first, then erupting into commanding growls, drew listeners into a world where defiance was celebrated, but mainstream America was largely unaware. Heavy metal was under scrutiny. Politicians debated morality in music. Parents feared its influence, and yet Mother had not yet ignited the wildfire it was destined to become by the early 1990s. The cultural landscape shifted dramatically. Grunge was emerging. MTV was hungry for authenticity, and America's teenagers were searching for music that resonated with real rebellion, real intensity. In 1993, Danzig re-released a live version of Mother, a recording from a 1992 concert, with heavier emphasis on the riff, amplified percussion, and a vocal track that seemed to push the listener physically. The video, full of pyrotechnics, shadow-drenched close-ups, and a stage set resembling some gothic apocalypse, debuted on MTV, and suddenly, the song was unavoidable. Teens who had never touched a Danzig record were chanting along, their hands raised, eyes wide, caught in the hypnotic pull of that riff. The song's irony became America's obsession. Mother was written to critique overprotective authority, yet it became the headline of moral panic. Parents walked into rooms with the TV on, glimpsing flames, skulls, and Danzig's piercing stare, and feared corruption of youth. Talk, which shows debated whether heavy metal caused rebellion. News segments warned about demonic influence. Religious commentators cited it as evidence that popular culture was failing its children. What Danzig had mocked in lyrics had manifested in real life, a living demonstration of panic fed by a misunderstanding of intent. Glenn Danzig's response to this frenzy was exactly what made him compelling. He didn't apologize. He didn't simplify his message for mass consumption. Interviews from the era show him deliberate, articulate, fiercely protective of his artistic vision. He explained that Mother was about freedom, about resisting control, about pushing back against arbitrary censorship. The more critics debated, the more the song's legend grew. Radio stations that had ignored Danzig now blasted the track during peak drive time. Record sales surged. Teenagers scrawled Danzig logos on notebooks. Stickers appeared on skateboards. And the band's live shows became near-mythical events. The song's structure contributed to its appeal. Unlike other metal tracks that relied on speed and flash, Mother was deliberate. It crept in slowly with its iconic riff, a tension-building approach that invited listeners to lean in. Glenn's voice, capable of subtle crooning and commanding projection in a single measure, created an intimacy and intensity rarely heard in mainstream music. This duality, dark and melodic, slow and commanding, made the song irresistible. For teenagers, it felt like discovering a secret code, a hidden truth embedded in music that adults couldn't control. And then came MTV's full embrace of Mother. The video was rotated heavily, pushing the song into the consciousness of millions. Teens watched intently, parents panicked, critics debated. And just when it seemed the cultural moment had peaked, a new variable appeared. Beavis and Butt-Head. The appearance of Mother on Beavis and Butt-Head in 1993 transformed the conversation. Created by Mike Judge, the show depicted two foolish teenagers sitting on a couch, watching and critiquing music videos with immature hilarity. When Mother played on their television, the panic transformed into comedy. Beavis fixated on the flames, muttering about how cool it would be to set things on fire, while Butt-Head snickered at Danzig's intense expressions. Suddenly, the song that had terrified some parents became a punchline. The cultural hysteria was reframed as absurd. A piece of art that had been misunderstood by authority became a vehicle for humor and satire. The collision of controversy and comedy solidified Mother as a cultural landmark. It was both dangerous and funny. Parents could no longer claim universal threat because the parody stripped the hysteria of power. Fans, however, still felt the intensity. The song retained every ounce of its menace, but now it was layered with multiple meanings: rebellion, parody, empowerment, and absurdity. In this duality, the track thrived, its legacy cemented not just by fans, but by history itself. By the mid-1990s, Mother had transcended its original context. It became an anthem of defiance, a musical object lesson in the power of controversy, and a case study in how satire can amplify rather than diminish cultural impact. From underground metal scenes to MTV's mainstream rotation, from parental outrage to animated mockery, this song carried a complexity unmatched by most contemporary hits. The flames, both literal in the video and metaphorical in public reaction, symbolized artistic fire that refused to be extinguished. And at the center of it all stood Glenn Danzig, a figure of magnetic intensity, untouched by distraction. Thriving in the chaos he had predicted, Glenn Danzig's Mother did not end with MTV's heavy rotation or parental panic. In fact, the song's second act was even stranger, more chaotic, and ultimately cemented its place in pop culture history. By 1993, Mother had become a cultural lightning rod. Teens were chanting its chorus at school, record stores were struggling to keep the single in stock, and talk shows were still debating whether heavy metal was a corrupting force. But just as the song seemed poised to settle into mainstream legend, it encountered a phenomenon that neither Glenn Danzig nor anyone else could have predicted. The cartoon satire of Beavis and Butt-Head, created by Mike Judge, Beavis and Butt-Head, had already become a defining television satire of teenage absurdity. The show centered on two dim-witted metalhead teenagers whose primary pastime was mocking music videos, cracking crude jokes, and displaying a baffling obsession with fire and destruction. When Mother appeared on their screen, the result was nothing short of chaotic brilliance. Beavis, transfixed by the flames in the video, muttered endlessly about how cool it would be to set things on fire, while Butt-Head snickered at Glenn Danzig's intense stare, his commentary ranging from confused amusement to outright derision. This moment transformed Mother from a symbol of panic into a multi-layered cultural phenomenon. The very imagery that had terrified parents defied the brooding intensity. The gothic theatricality was now filtered through the lens of comedy. Viewers laughed, absorbed, and engaged with the song in a way that was entirely new. The panic surrounding heavy metal was reframed as absurd, and yet the music itself retained every ounce of its dark, hypnotic energy. The juxtaposition of fear and laughter created a perfect storm, solidifying Mother as both serious and comedic, threatening and entertaining. Interestingly, Glenn Danzig himself seemed to thrive on the chaos. Interviews from the era show that he understood the absurdity of the hysteria. He did not apologize or soften his image. If anything, he leaned into it, amplifying the theatricality of his performances and embracing the intensity that had caused parents to panic in the first place. The satire of Beavis and Butt-Head, rather than undermining the song, became an extension of its power. It proved that Mother could survive reinterpretation, parody, and criticism without losing its core identity. The song's narrative arc continued to evolve as it reached wider audiences. Radio stations played it relentlessly, even outside the traditional heavy metal markets. MTV's rotation kept it in the public eye, while Beavis and Butt-Head introduced it to a younger generation who might never have sought out a Danzig album. The track's simple but powerful riff, combined with Glenn Danzig's operatic growl, made it instantly recognizable. Whether listeners were laughing at cartoon characters or headbanging in a bedroom, the song created a shared cultural experience that crossed age groups and musical tastes. The impact of Mother on American youth culture was profound. Teenagers discovered the thrill of rebellion without necessarily rebelling in reality. The song gave them an outlet, a way to feel powerful, defiant, and part of a community that understood the dark humor and intensity of metal. At the same time, the presence of Beavis and Butt-Head provided a lens of absurdity, allowing audiences to acknowledge the ridiculousness of societal panic. This combination of fear and laughter made Mother not just a song, but a touchstone of a generation, navigating the tension between authority and individuality. Moreover, Mother helped redefine how music and media before its widespread rotation and parody, songs were often limited in cultural reach to their core fan bases, but Danzig's track broke through, showing that music could simultaneously provoke outrage, inspire devotion, and entertain across multiple formats. It demonstrated that a single work of art could occupy several roles: a challenge to authority, a source of artistic admiration, and a comedic punchline, all at once. A few songs in the early 1990s achieved this level of multifaceted influence, and Mother became a blueprint for how music could navigate and manipulate cultural discourse. The flame imagery in the video became iconic, symbolizing danger, power, and rebellion. For Beavis, it was literal fascination. For teenagers, it was metaphorical defiance. For parents, it was threat. And for Glenn Danzig, it was artistic fire that refused to be tamed. Every element of the video, the shadows, the camera angles, the slow-building tension of the riff added layers of meaning that allowed the song to endure far beyond its initial release. The genius of Mother lies not just in its musical composition, but in its ability to carry multiple interpretations simultaneously, ensuring its longevity. In cultural memory, as the 1990s progressed, Mother continued to influence and inspire. It appeared in movies, television, soundtracks, and became a reference point in countless discussions about heavy metal's impact on youth. The paradox of the song's journey is striking. What was once feared as potentially corrupting became celebrated as art, comedy, and cultural commentary. It survived the intense scrutiny of parents, politicians, and critics, and emerged stronger, more iconic, and more universally recognized than ever before. Glenn Danzig's role in this story cannot be overstated. He maintained a mystique that kept him separate from mainstream celebrity culture, while simultaneously engaging with audiences in ways that magnified the song's reach. He avoided compromises that might have diluted the intensity of Mother, ensuring that every performance, every note, and every lyric retained its original defiance. The track became a bridge, introducing listeners to his earlier work with Samhain and the Misfits, reinforcing the continuity and depth of his artistic vision. Ultimately, the story of Mother is one of transformation and endurance. It began as a critique of censorship, became a source of parental panic, exploded into mainstream awareness via MTV, and finally reached a level of cultural immortality when filtered through the absurd comedy of Beavis and Butt-Head. Its riffs still command attention, its lyrics still resonate with rebellion, and its legacy endures as a testament to the power of music to challenge, entertain, and inspire across decades. Fire, teenage curiosity, absurd satire, and artistic defiance collided in a way that few songs have ever managed. Mother survived outrage, embraced parody, and solidified Glenn Danzig as a figure whose intensity could not be tamed. The song remains a landmark in music history, illustrating how controversy, creativity, and humor can intersect to create a legend. Every note, every riff, every flicker of flame contributes to a narrative about freedom, resilience, and the enduring power of unapologetic art. Even decades later, when new listeners hear the opening riff of Mother, the effect is immediate. The tension, the authority-challenging lyrics, and the hypnotic rhythm demand attention. The song's journeyed from underground metal track to mainstream sensation to comedic icon shows how unpredictable and powerful cultural influence can be. Mother is more than music. It is a phenomenon, a testament to how art, when authentic, cannot be controlled, tamed, or forgotten. And that is the brilliance of Glenn Danzig and Mother. From fire and fear to laughter and legend, it transformed not just a band, but an entire moment in music history. It taught audiences that defiance can be both terrifying and entertaining, that satire can elevate art, and that the louder the backlash, the stronger the flame of legend burns.